Hi, Jose Vega here, your federal court certified interpreter. This is going to be a very important video, especially for those of you that have never used an interpreter in a deposition or in a hearing. This is how to use an interpreter for the very first time, what things you need to keep in mind. So you may have done depositions with other English-speaking individuals and everything goes fine. You ask a question and then there's an answer, but how do you do it now that you have an interpreter? What are you supposed to do? Well, let's start with a hearing, a trial. If you're doing a trial or you're at a hearing and your client needs to understand everything that's going on, not for a witness on the stand, if you have an interpreter interpreting simultaneously for the person, you don't really have to do anything. You just talk to the judge, do whatever you have to do, and the interpreter will be doing whisper interpreting or escort interpreting. We will be whispering into the person's ear what's going on, or we will be using the simultaneous translation equipment that I mentioned in one of the prior videos, or we will be doing Zoom simultaneous interpreting, or using one of the other methods for simultaneous interpreting that we've explained in other videos. So you have to basically make believe the interpreter's not there. You may hear the interpreter's voice all the time in the background, especially if the interpreter is sitting next to you or in your table, but next to your client. You just have to try to ignore that. The interpreter does need to speak up sometimes, not raise their voice that much, but we do need to be able to enunciate, and our own voices interfere with what we hear. So you can always ask the interpreter to maybe lower the voice a little bit if necessary. In my next video, I will show you a device that is used to muffle the interpreter's voice, doing simultaneous interpreting in court proceedings. I promised I would do a video about it when I was doing the video on the simultaneous interpreting equipment, the radio equipment. So now next video, I will show you the device to muffle the interpreter's voice. I think you'll like that one. So what do you do? How do you interpret? How do you ask your questions when you are using interpreter first time in a deposition, or when there's a witness on the witness stand? Well, first, you have to get a good interpreter. You have to get a certified interpreter, because a certified interpreter will know what to do. It'll make it easier for you. A certified interpreter knows that he or she cannot speak in the third person. So in other words, the interpreter cannot say, he says that he didn't do it. He says he was not there that night. He says he was driving the car. So we will not speak in the third person. We will copy or parrot what the person is saying word for word, or the intent of the person, of the speaker. So I would say the best tip that I could give you is make believe the interpreter's not even there. Make believe the interpreter's not there. The interpreter's a fly on the wall. That would be the best compliment you ever give an interpreter. I didn't even know you were there, because the interpreter is supposed to be invisible. And you just ask the question directly to your witness. Sir, what is your name? The interpreter could be a male interpreter and will say, my name is Jenny. My name is Mary Smith. Okay. And then where do you live? After the interpreter will say, where do you live, in the target language, and the person will answer, and the interpreter will say, I live at 123 Maple Street, and so on and so forth. You ignore the interpreter and make believe the interpreter is not even there. If there's a problem with the translation, if there's a problem with not understanding anything, oh, I don't understand, says the person. The interpreter is supposed to say, I don't understand, in English. And you may think, well, is it the interpreter that's not understanding, or is it the person that's not understanding? Again, go back to the same thing we said before. The interpreter's not even there. Oh, ma'am, you didn't understand my question. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. Ba, 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 ba. And you keep going. Whenever there's something, someone says, I don't understand something, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, they are not understanding your question. It's as if the interpreter is not there. People that are very smart. Your witnesses may be very, very smart. Just because they don't speak the language doesn't mean they're not. So they may say they don't understand something. They really want clarification about the question. If the interpreter is doing a good job interpreting the ambiguities, the double meanings of some sentences, they may be asking on purpose, why, what did you say? What did you mean? And they may purposefully be using certain words, and it's easy to blame it on the interpreter. Why did the interpreter use that word? Maybe it's a problem with the translation. It could be, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. When you have a good interpreter, they will try to keep the intent, the meaning, the underlying tones of the translation. So again, that is something we can tell when you have a brand new attorney, is that, and then they never used an interpreter before, they will always say, tell him what he was doing that night. Tell him, ask him if he works, ask him what his work schedule is, ask him how did he fall. And what happens is that you may say it correctly for the first couple of questions. What is your name? What is your address? And then when it gets a little bit more complex, you go into third person. And in third person, it becomes a disaster. Because then when the interpreter is supposed to interpret exactly what you say, and in third person, the sentences will not come out right. It won't come out right. Well, that's basically it for using an interpreter. Ignore the interpreter, and try to make believe the interpreter is not even there, and just answer directly. Ask the questions directly. And if the person asks and wants a repetition, it is the person, the witness, that is asking for a repetition. It is not the interpreter. Something to note, a professional interpreter in a deposition, if they want to say something, they want to clarify something, the interpreter will usually say, the interpreter does not understand a term. May the interpreter clarify. The interpreter did not hear the witness. May the interpreter did not hear that question, counsel. Counsel, can you please repeat the question? So the interpreter will refer to himself in the third person to avoid any confusion. That's what a professional interpreter would do. That's why I would suggest hiring a certified interpreter, or an interpreter that has experience, or going through an agency that could help you get the best interpreter possible. Well, I hope you liked the video. Hope it was useful. I think it will help. It will help. I've seen a lot of attorneys make that mistake, the rookie mistakes, but with this, I think you'll look like a pro.